Hey guys, look, Rudy Giuliani was sweating on stage today and his hair dye came down his face. Duh, it's so funny, right? It's not like he had anything important to say, right?
Well, actually, he did. Guess what? The press conference that they held earlier today addressed a bunch of concerns that people have been, well, following this story. Well, it's the biggest story in the world right now. So it addressed a bunch of concerns that people have been having. And it did a good job as being, well, as Jenna Ellis said, it was an opening statement. Like, we don't need to divulge all of our information, but here's what we have, here's what we're setting up, and this is what the future is going to look like. So for the fucking Guardian, I just pulled it up because they are one of the most egregious examples of this. I also had another one pulled up, but it was just kind of like beating a dead horse. All you need to do is just look on CNN, MSNBC, ABC, up here in Canada, Global TV, CBC, CTV, they're all saying the exact same things. Oh, it was a fucking disaster. Oh, Rudy Giuliani, he. Yeah, he's a fucking old man. Of course he dyes his hair. Do you think anybody looks like that? Fucking, why do you think if you compare old pictures in the 80s to what Joe Biden looks like now, he seems to have more hair? Word to the wise out there, the older you get, the more hair you don't have. That's why Biden's always so concerned with younger people. He just wants to remember what real natural hair looks like and smells like in his case. Well, let's go ahead and at least see what these dental hygiene enthusiasts out there have to say about what happened at the fairly interesting. It's about an hour and 40 minutes long. I listened to it on 1.5 speed and everybody seemed to talk normally because, to be completely honest, Giuliani's the other side of 70 and Sidney Powell talks like she has nothing but time on her hands. So everything sounded normal. So if you guys want to watch the actual video, by all means, but I'll at least give you the high points and the quick hitting stuff that came out of it. Sweaty Rudy Giuliani suffers hair malfunction in latest bizarre press conference. See how they're initially just trying to taint this so it's like, oh, there's nothing to see here, guys. Remember, no instances of widespread voter fraud. If I ever have to hear that and social distancing again after 2021, I'll probably pull my tongue out and make sure that it reaches my brainstem. Trump's personal lawyer was trying to drum up interest in tales of election rigging, but viewers were drawn to the drama on his head. No, you guys drew it to that because what he had to say was powerful. Enough about me prefacing this. Let's see what the Guardian has to say. On November 7th, the day the presidential election was called for Joe Biden, by who exactly? The legislatures in the different states? Or was it just your favorite friends in the media? Yeah, exactly. Former New York mayor turned Trump attorney. Well, he started out as the guy who I think nobody's properly characterizing the fact that this guy single-handedly, him and his office to be completely fair, took down the 5 families in New York, the most powerful crime ring in North America, if not the world. Okay, this guy had hits out on him. Now, he is kind of fucking with the Biden crime family and the Clinton crime family syndicate, so this could be a little bit more dangerous for him in the long term, but this guy took on the 5 fucking families in New York and was successful. So if there's one guy who I want on my side in this, yeah, it's definitely Giuliani. Oh yeah, and by the way, he kind of navigated a national tragedy. You may have heard of 9/11. Yeah, better than anybody could have possibly done. Addressed the media at a landscaping company between a sex shop and a crematorium on Philadelphia's industrial fringe. That's the first paragraph. The Guardian's allegedly a respected news source. As you can see, they have yet to get into any of the allegations. For 2 weeks, as the Trump campaign continued to claim without evidence that the election had been stolen, America wondered if Giuliani could possibly ever top that. No, it's you guys pushing this clickbait narrative that they don't have anything and Giuliani's a sweaty guy. Those two things can be mutually exclusive. On Thursday, he gave it a darn good try. I want to watch my language. A day after the claims of massive voter fraud fell flat in a Pennsylvania courtroom by a partisan hack judge, and they also claimed, and by they I mean the media, of course, let's clarify who I mean by they, said that President Trump walked away from that lawsuit. That wasn't the case after all. That's why I didn't even bother covering that, because by the time it was reported and the time it was redacted, the narrative had completely flipped. This is the fucking crazy world we live in. First, while claiming Republican poll observers had been kept too far away from the ballot counters in Philadelphia, let's see if they rebuke this. A key Trump claim in a vital state, which, like others, fell to Biden. Giuliani attempted to recite a scene from My Cousin Vinny. Nope. Instead of addressing the fact that I think everybody knows at this point that Republican poll watchers were kept 6, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50 feet away from ballot totaling, ballot counting, ballot verification, which didn't really take place. But no, instead of actually rebuting that, he used an analogy, which everybody who's trying to make a point uses. It relays a point that you can relate to. It makes your claims more, for lack of a better term, relatable. And he was making the point that you can't see fuck all 20 feet away. Like the one that I use most often is trying to read a book across the room. The one that he's using is from My Cousin Vinny. You know the movie? It's one of my favorite law movies because he comes from Brooklyn. He said, Giuliani, who also comes from Brooklyn, well done. They must have a word count in this. Tried to sum up the key plot point in the Jonathan Lynn's film. I'm glad that they give the background on that and not on any of the substance of Giuliani's arguments in here, in which Pesci's personal injury lawyer hit hereto out of his depth in a murder trial manages to discredit a key witness by proving her vision to be impaired. Feel free to read through the rest of this tripe, but all it does is just slander Giuliani. And like I said, this was in an hour and 42 minute to be maybe precise. I think they were up there for about an hour and a half of it. There is nothing in here that addresses the claims, the sworn affidavits that were there. Just saying, ha ha ha, his hair dye rolled down his head. Isn't it funny? Lol, lol, lol. No. We have to go to an actual news source. Rudy Giuliani and the Trump campaign held a press conference on Thursday afternoon, bringing forth a detailing and exhaustive evidence of voter fraud and irregularities. This is weird reading from a different news source and they aren't trying to slander anybody. It's kind of refreshing. Giuliani presented affidavits from voters and poll workers from Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Detroit, and other locations alleging outright fraud by election officials on behalf of the Biden-Harris ticket. He claimed that there are more than double the number of votes needed to overturn the election. Okay, well, the last line might be a little bit of a hyperbolic statement, more than double. It's impossible to say at this point, but there are sworn affidavits. And if you guys don't believe that that is actual evidence, those are sworn testimonies that if they are indeed proven to be false, you face perjury charges. You are swearing under oath that your testimony is 100% true. You cannot back out of those. And Kayleigh McEnany has, 234 pages of it. They have hundreds just out of Wayne County. And you've seen that the two officials on the GOP side that I detailed in the last video, they have first-hand accounts of the information that's going on there, and they have signed affidavits. These things mean something. I'm not trying to convince you guys. I'm just saying that in the light, that the mainstream media, or media in general, is trying to gaslight everybody on this, affidavits are, in fact, real evidence. Giuliani blasted the media, saying that they continually say there's no evidence of voter fraud and irregularities, then holding up the evidence in the form of affidavits in his hand. He said that the media continues to report that there is no evidence. Then they are lying. He said the evidence was publicly available and could be reviewed by the press, and that he could welcome the Biden team to cross-examine the witness to fraud. Exactly, because putting these sworn affidavits out there with actual names of people results in, the targeted harassment and forced suppression of the individuals, beat a dead horse at this point, the officials out there in Wayne County. Giuliani offered evidence that shows that 15,000 voters in Pittsburgh alone were disenfranchised of their vote. Normally, all we've been talking about is what's happening in Pennsylvania, but we also forget, or not in Pennsylvania, but in Philadelphia more specifically. And then we go to the other side of the state. There is a equally as large, not quite as large, but another large city there, which might be a little bit more working class, might be a little bit more apt to a working class mindset, obviously. Out there in Pittsburgh, And to hear that there is evidence of irregularities or outright voter fraud is news to my ears. And of course, these claims should be cataloged and presented to a court. All right. So yeah, 15,000 voters in Pittsburgh alone were disenfranchised of their vote and forced to vote via provisional ballot when they arrived at their polling place. These votes allegedly were told that they had already voted by mail. I'm going to guess they didn't request a mail-in ballot, and I'm going to guess somebody else already took care of that for them. And regardless of who they eventually did vote for, because, you know, bigger cities tend to be Democrat. I know I'm not exactly breaking any new ground here, but yeah, their votes deserve to count. They don't have to jump through fucking hoops in order to fill it out because they are there in person. They are the real people. Giuliani alleges as well that ballots were trucked into Detroit at 4:30 in the morning on election night to be counted after poll workers believed that Republican observers to the count had left. He claimed that workers said that these were Biden ballots, improperly packaged and without votes for any of the additional races. He said that the votes were counted 3 times. Trump attorney Sidney Powell spoke about the concerns with regards to processing of ballots overseas and communist money in the voting process, as well as specific allegations regarding voting machines and rigged algorithms. That is in regards to, you guessed it, everybody's favorite voting software and voting systems, Dominion, who has ties to Venezuela, helped Maduro get elected, and also has significant Chinese money. Now, I don't want to seem like one of those leftists who was just screeching from the rooftops, "Oh, Russia," for the past 4 fucking years. But, yeah, you can legitimately trace back the Dominion software to Venezuela. And that's another one of their signed affidavits, because they have that from Dominion whistleblowers, that it is, in fact, very, very easy to tamper with, if not outright rig the machines. President Trump won by a landslide, and we're going to prove it. Hope so. And we are going to reclaim the United States of America for the people who vote for freedom, Powell said. Like I said, the affidavits are a start, and you can't really throw everything out on the table in front of everyone because, you know, that kind of taints your court case. Any lawyer will tell you that you don't play all of your cards at the start. There have been a number of issues since the election that have been raised by the Trump campaign, which have prevented the election from being settled. Discrepancies in Wayne County, Michigan, home of the state's largest city, Detroit, have prevented the board canvassers there of certifying the results of the election. I think I just did about half an hour on that. In Wisconsin, here we go. The campaign has requested a recount in both Milwaukee and Dane counties, after concerns were raised to the concerns over number of ballots cast against the number of registered voters. A recount is set to begin there on Friday. So I'm just going to go ahead and go to the transcript here and hit out some of the most important points that were raised by Giuliani and Powell here. One of our plaintiffs, Mr. Henry, cast an absentee ballot and he failed to put it in the secure envelope. He just put it in open, naked. That ballot was cast aside because it was invalid. That breaks the privacy of the vote. In Pittsburgh and in Philadelphia, if they noticed that there wasn't an inner envelope, they'd contact the voter and would allow them to vote again. Or if he didn't fill it out completely, or if he made a mistake and didn't sign his full name, he would be allowed to cure it. There is no such provision under the law of Pennsylvania. Exactly. The Democrat Secretary of State made that up in order to maximize the votes in Philadelphia and in Pittsburgh, and to minimize the votes in the other parts of the state. Clearly illegal, clearly voter fraud, easily provable, hundreds of witnesses, maybe thousands. Referencing another affidavit, a truck pulled up to the Detroit Center where they were counting ballots. The people thought it was food, so they all ran to the truck. It wasn't food. It was thousands and thousands of ballots, and the ballots were in garbage cans, and they were in paper bags. What about igloo coolers? What about the little red wagon, Rudy? Come on now. They were in cardboard boxes, and they were taken into the center. They were put onto a number of tables. At that time, they were thought all Republican inspectors had left. All but 2 had, and an employee of Dominion, who we will address a little bit later. And I will get to that. We're just going to clean up the Rudy part here first. Said we'd touch on Wisconsin here, so we got quite a paragraph, and I think it's all worth your time here. Wisconsin had a very small margin. 20,544 last time I looked. In Wisconsin, we're going into great detail. Very similar plan. Republicans shut out in the city of Milwaukee and also in Madison. Republicans almost uniformly shut out in the absentee process. Not allowed to inspect, not allowed to look at the ballots. We have in Milwaukee and in the state of Wisconsin a much stricter law. Here's the key. Wisconsin doesn't allow mail-in ballots. They didn't buy into the big mail-in ballot solution, Wisconsin. When you look at their constitution, almost seems to not like absentee ballots. I wonder why. They state it is not a right, a privilege, and that they have very, very strict procedures. And the strict procedures say that you can't be given an absentee ballot. You have to personally apply for it, which is how it's always been prior to 2020. It's illegally basically to solicit a vote, and they have actually many reasons for it to be, for that. Probably goes back to their progressive days. When I say progressive, I mean the late 19th century, when Biden was in his first term in the Senate. Early 20th century progressive, when that really meant progressive, not retrogressive. So there are 60,000 ballots in Milwaukee County and 40,000 in Madison. That, as far as we can tell, and this is why we are auditing, because we have very good information that the numbers are going to come out about here that don't have applications. Under the law of the state of Wisconsin, already decided there's no application for an absentee ballot. The absentee ballot is thrown away. That's the very, very, very important part. Okay? That's why these recounts are totally fucking useless, because if you just go in and it's like, oh, okay, I got this whole stack there. They're all there. Okay, I counted them all. You want me to count them again? Guess what? I'm going to come out with the exact same number. That's why you need to audit and you need to recanvass everything. You need to go back and you make sure that the signatures check out, that you need to make sure that everything is properly filled out on those ballots. Because, okay, this isn't like filling out a will when you go to vote. Most of the people that watch this channel are all above age, are all of voting age. So I'm sure you guys have been in the little ballot box and you have had the ballot in front of you. Or if you've been unfortunate enough to have to use one of those electronic voting systems, I'm not too sure how those work. I'm sure that they probably just vote for whoever you want, or whoever they want rather, not who you want. But yeah, on a paper ballot, you just fill out who you want, you stay in the fucking lines, and you sign in. And up here in Canada, you just show your ID, and it's like, okay, I am me. Let me vote. I'm on voter roll. Okay, good. Thank you for a ballot. Fill it in, fold it over once, and put it in the box. You're good to go. So yeah, I thought you guys might like that Wisconsin thing, because when they do the recount starting Friday, like they were saying there, tomorrow, wow. Yeah. Especially because Trump's already put up the $3 million, which, okay, fine. The campaign put up, and yeah, they are definitely going to be looking and making sure that that audit takes place. So we might be getting some information about that over the weekend. I'm quite sure it'll be up by Monday, so we will see. And here's a state that I did not expect to come up whatsoever. I thought it was just kind of decided because it's leaned blue for the past couple of elections as far as I can remember. But at the same time, yesterday I recorded on some those are outright voter fraud charges that were brought in California, there in Los Angeles County. We got to talk about a weird state that I was thinking, it's like, I heard this and it's, what the fuck is going on? Arizona is a state, not Arizona, you fuckers, is a state where we were looking at very, very carefully. I would say we're probably going to bring a lawsuit in Arizona. More than probably, I think we're going to bring a lawsuit in Arizona. We are still collecting the evidence in the state, and we're looking at what would surprise you. We have a very, very significant amount of fraud allegations in the state of New Mexico. And we have a significant number of allegations in the state of Virginia. If you guys remember back on election night, and I know this just immediately triggered something because when I was listening, I must have missed the Virginia part as well. But, yeah, first things first on Virginia. It was called very, very early by most of the media outlets. And then all the votes started to roll in. It was called for Biden, by the way, in case you were wondering. And then they started to get into the hundreds of thousands of votes. And then all of a sudden, President Trump was up by like 200,000 votes, which seemed preposterous. It's like, okay, way back in the day, in like the 80s and the 70s, Virginia was a blood red state. It was like Oklahoma red, okay? And then because the larger the federal government got, it's right on the border of D.C. there, and most of the bureaucrats live in Fairfax County. So over time, the amount of Republicans that were there started to get overrun by Democrats, and, larger cities create more Democratic strongholds, yada, yada, yada. And then that eventually flipped Virginia into being a leans blue, mostly blue state. So it was very routine for it to be called very early for the Democrat. It would be like, as soon as the polls closed, yes, California is Democrat. No fucking doubt. But then when the results started to come in, and I think AP and somebody else rescinded their call on Virginia. So to see that come up, and the fact that they think that there is allegations, or they have allegations in Virginia, is very sus. And especially New Mexico. I hadn't heard fucking anything about New Mexico. And I spend way too much goddamn time looking at the news, guys. So that one is definitely out of left field. And if you're thinking that they're holding some information back, that is a little crumb out there. That will definitely let you know that they're doing a bunch of deep diving. And I think it was the governor, or I know it's not the Secretary of State of Arizona, but it's some high-ranking Republican in Arizona who said that they are not going to certify the results of the election until all of the lawsuits in Arizona have been resolved. There's a big one in Maricopa County, and it's not from the Trump campaign itself, but as Rudy said here, they're going to be filing one probably very soon. So that's enough from Rudy here. Let's double back to the post-millennial here and take a look at the big point of what Sidney Powell had to say. So she's been trumpeting the fact that they have a bunch of allegations coming out of Dominion Software. And she's been talking about this for a minute. And this is from Lou Dobbs on Monday. She broke down some suspicions and allegations of illegalities with regards to Smartmatic voting software, sourcing affidavit statements from a Smartmatic whistleblower, documents showing the Dominion voting system submitted a bid to the city of Philadelphia in 2018 to be considered as their contractor for voting machines. Those same documents reveal very little about the company's foreign connections. When asked about the city to a list of foreign ownership or investors in either the parent company or its subsidiaries, Dominion had something to say but nothing to show. Well, how about what Sidney Powell dropped today? The Dominion voting systems, the Smartmatic technology software, and the software that goes into the computerized voting systems here in as well, not just Dominion, were created in Venezuela at the direction of Hugo Chavez to make sure he never lost an election after one constitutional referendum came out the way he did not want it to come out. We have one very strong witness who has explained how it all works. His affidavit is attached to the pleadings of the Linwood lawsuit he filed in Georgia. It is a stunning, detailed affidavit because he was with Hugo Chavez while he was being briefed on how it worked. He was with Chavez when he saw it operate to make sure the election came out his way. That was the express purpose for creating this software. He has seen it operate, and as soon as he saw the multiple states shut down the voting on the night of the election, y'all remember that, he knew the same thing was happening here. He knew that that's what had gone on. Now, the software itself was created with so many variables and so many backdoors that it can be hooked up to the internet or a thumb drive stuck in it or whatever. But one of the most characteristic features is the ability to flip votes. It can set and run an algorithm that probably ran all over the country to take a certain percentage of votes for President Trump and flip them to Biden, which we might never have uncovered had the votes for President Trump not been so overwhelming in so many of those states that broke the algorithm that had been plugged into the system, and that's what caused them to shut down the states and they were shut down in. That's when they came in the back door and all the mail-in ballots, many of which they had actually fabricated. Some were on pristine paper with identically matching perfect circle dots for Biden. I've also heard this one out there before, that they were all in and they all had the same signature. They were all perfectly filled out circles and it was only for Biden. And like I forget which video it was, but I also stated the reason that these votes only get cast for one candidate and that there's nothing else down the ballot is because that would create more instances where they can have their election tossed out, and therefore those votes and also get thrown out at the same time because they're on the same ballot. That can be proved to be falsified under a bunch of different races. So they try to make their fraud as simplistic as possible. Others were shoved in batches. They're always put in a certain number of batches, and people would rerun the same batch. This corresponds with our statistical evidence that shows incredible spikes in voter counts and particular times that correspond to eyewitness testimony of numerous people who have come forward and said they saw the ballots come in the back door at that time. There's widespread use of this. Dominion itself is utilized in 2,000 jurisdictions in 30 states. It has been uncertifiable in multiple states. You realize all the problems that it had, including Texas. Experts have described it across the board, from Princeton Group to the 3 professors to experts that we have talked about its end user vulnerabilities. That's important because Dominion approached Texas to use their voting software and their entire vote systems. But Texas just told them to fuck off, and they couldn't properly verify the safety features of the Dominion software. And this is where I'll leave the statement here, because I think it's something that kind of holds a little bit of water based on what we know about what they can do with programming algorithms. They can say that shows of the votes from one thing to another. They can say that a Biden vote counts as 1.25 and a Trump vote counts as 0.75. And those may be the numbers that were actually used here. So it's interesting, based on the numbers that were reported before everybody went to bed, and they said that they were going to stop counting for the night, and then waking up in the morning and that those margins magically flipped in Wisconsin, in Michigan, and Pennsylvania got ridiculously close, even though when counting stopped, and I use that in air quotes, Trump was up by 800,000 votes in Pennsylvania, and then all of a sudden it was within 200,000, and then that lead just magically dispersed by Saturday, I think, when the media crowned Biden as our next Lord and Savior. So it's just something to think about. So to be perfectly clear about this press conference, what did they bring to the table? Well, hundreds of sworn affidavits, circumstantial evidence, and proof that they have whistleblowers and experts at the ready for whenever these court cases are going to be held. What they didn't have was an illegal voter illegally casting their illegal ballot, because, well, it would be like making a phone call to the fire department. If I may be so bold as to make an analogy, I don't want the Guardian to make a smear piece out for me. But yeah, you call the fire department, okay? Your smoke alarm goes off. You have to stand in your front yard and you see the smoke billowing out your front window. You smell it in the air. You place the phone call. You say, help, my house is on fire. Okay, sir, what do you see? Well, there's smoke. I smell smoke. My fire alarm's going off. Sir, do you see the fire? No, but here's all my evidence that would let me to believe that there is a fire in my house. Well, if you can't see the fire, there's nothing we can do for you. That is how the media is playing this right now. Now, just think, if your house was on fire, would you want somebody to come in and investigate that? If you have all of those different things? I think you probably would. And just, well, I just had the Guardian article up there for you guys to take a look at as well. And what they're just trying to do right now is defame and smear and not address any of the points. Like they did in that Guardian article. They didn't address anything. We had to go to the post-millennial, and then we had to go, because nobody else is fucking cataloging this shit, I had to go right to the transcript. So if you guys want to watch the video, like I said, hour 30 probably, if you cut out the preamble, play it on 1.5, or I'll be linking to the transcript as well. You can just punch in a bunch of different terms that you want to see, but I think I covered all the high points there. So there will be more press conferences, there will be more lawsuits, and there will be a whole bunch more headaches out there, but your boy will have you covered here. So stay tuned if anything gets a little bit funky out there. And that's enough voter fraud for today. I think I'll do something fun for the last video. I thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.